Welcome, everyone. I'm Tammy Mastroberte, founder of Elevated Existence and publisher and editorial director of the award-winning Elevated Existence magazine. Today, my guest is Mallika Chopra. She is the founder of Intent.com. She is an author, and she's here to actually talk about her newest book with us, which is called Living with Intent, My Somewhat Messy Journey to Purpose, Peace, and Joy. And for those of you who don't know, she's also the daughter of Deepak Chopra. So, Mallika, thank you for joining us today and for coming here to talk about this book. I think the book is fantastic, and I'm really I'm excited to kind of bring some of the pieces or the chunks of that I really enjoyed to our audience. So first, I know that you kind of started to write the book because you yourself were struggling with your own purpose in life or finding meaning in life, and so you kind of decided to embark on this year-long journey of actualizing your own intents and creating your own intents. So can you kind of share some of the biggest aha moments that you had? There's so many of them in the book, but can you share kind of some of them that really kind of created breakthroughs for you during this journey?
Yeah, so one, thank you so much. I'm such a fan of all of the work that you guys are doing, and I've been following you for a long time, so congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and I'm thrilled to share the book. You know, a book is an interesting thing for me. It incubated for many, many years, and finally, I think I reached a stage where I had been talking a lot about wellness, teaching meditation, you know, got out more in the public because of Intent.com about speaking about all this stuff, but realized one day while I was on stage teaching others how to meditate that I felt a bit of a fraud because I realized I was not meditating regularly. I was totally overwhelmed and stressed with my life. I'm addicted to sugar. I, wasn't exercising the way I wanted to, and kind of really had this moment that, I got to make some changes in my life if I'm to live with intent and live kind of authentically as well. So the book really is that recommitment to living with intent, to rediscovering, I would say, so many of the lessons that I've learned being in the family that I've grown up in. I learned how to meditate when I was 9 years old. I'm 43 now, almost 44, so I've literally been meditating for over 30 years.
Wow.
And yet I'm the first one to admit that I am the most irregular meditator. And so that's the thing. I think part of it was also people assume that as a Chopra, I'm a meditator, I eat vegan, I love yoga, and it couldn't be further from the truth. Obviously, I have some amazing tools that I've been taught in my life. And like everyone else, we have a messy journey.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're on the path and other times we waver, and which is totally, I think, fine. And part of this book was about self-acceptance, about what does it mean to really set intents, which I see is very different as goals. So really asking ourselves those deep questions of who am I? What do I want? How can I serve? And sometimes we don't even know the answers. I realize for me, I am a busy mom with 2 kids. I run an internet company. I'm doing many things. And I realized I was on autopilot without even remembering really what made me happy. So in the book, and you asked for some of the nuggets, but I created a path to intent based on the acronym INTENT. And in each one of those kind of reflected on stories, interviewed amazing people. I spoke to Eckhart Tolle, Marianne Williamson, Andrew Weil, Dr. Dan Siegel. I mean, I was very fortunate because of my father. I know all these people. So each one provided insight.
Yes, yes, and I think in a way it's kind of like because you know all these people, you were able to gather all of these pieces of information and kind of put them all together in one book that has so many different pieces. I think that people can see themselves in.
That really was my intent. Is to, one, be relatable. At the end of the day, I am a busy woman, but a mom, and I'm constantly either feeling guilty about not being at school, or I'm guilty about not doing my work, or feeling guilty about like my chocolate chip cookie that I just ate. And it's something that's many of my friends relate to, that they're the caregivers for so many other people. One of my kind of steps is around nurture. And I realized, I'm so busy trying to take care of everyone else that I've kind of forgotten to take care of myself. And so, that really in the book, I think my goal was to say we all have messy journeys and that's okay.
Yes. Now, you mentioned that you took I love that you took the word intent and kind of made an acronym out of it. So I know it stands for incubate, notice, trust, express, nurture, and take action. So can you explain to our viewers kind of quickly what, each one of those stands for and how it relates to living your intent?
Yeah, so, for me, living with intent means ultimately leading a healthier, happier, more connected, and purposeful life. And so when I was working on this book, and like I said, it took years of thinking about this, but I realized from the work of my dad and others, acronyms or 7 steps or whatever it may be very useful. So I really thought about each of those letters and kind of what the steps are. So I is for incubate. And incubate for me is really reconnecting to who we really ultimately are. For me, that was through my meditation practice, but I know other people have different forms that they do that. But remembering, what do I want in life? When we were young, my dad used to make my brother and I repeat this phrase that's from the Course of Miracles, which goes, I am responsible for what I see. I choose the feelings I experience and set the goals I will achieve. And everything that seems to happen to me, I ask for and receive as I'm the best. And we'd ask us what you ask for. We'd say, the Celtic, white, pretty material stuff. And we'd say, well, what about asking for happiness, love, connection? So for me, incubation is really about going back to that place and asking, what are the qualities in our life that we really ask for and seek?
Right.
N is for notice, which is noticing the internal dialogue. I realized I'm always saying I'm tired, I'm stressed, I'm exhausted. And obviously that's the conversation I'm having with myself and others. That was what I was creating in my life. Notice is also noticing the messages our body is sending us. I started to really notice not only my addiction to sugar, but kind of the effects that was having, whether it was body pain or other stuff. And noticing the messages the universe is always sending us. We come across people, places, circumstances every day that can help us on our journey. And if often we're so busy with our task list and the things we have to do that we don't even notice the many opportunities. T is for trust, which is trusting our intuition, trusting that what we want is right for us, and also trusting that the universe is there to help take care of the details. E is for express, and I'm such a believer in this that I have an entire social media network called .com where people share intents. We now have an app on the iPhone store, and I really believe that when we express what we want, we take ownership of it, we become accountable, and we create a network of support by putting it out there. We don't all have to do it on the internet, but even if we do it for ourselves, I think that's a very important process.
Yes.
And the next N is for nurture, like I said, which is nurturing ourselves, letting go of the guilt, self-criticism, the shame that many people have, taking care of ourselves so that we can take care of others, as well as nurturing relationships, because, at least for me, my support network is what helps me get through the day and also live a more fulfilling life. And the final T is take action, which I strongly believe there is a time to set smart goals and to take action. For many of us who have been in the self-help space, often people say, oh, just set the intent and it will happen. And, I don't believe that. Actually, I believe that we set the intent, and then when we've done all this other work, we need to take action, but take action becomes much more effortless and easy, and very different from like setting a New Year's resolution or setting goals. It really becomes more effortless.
Yes. Now, specifically in I think it's the Notice chapter, I know you had interviewed Dr. Siegel, and you actually were talking about, this kind of stuck out at me as something I think we can all start practicing, is you were talking about research that shows when you do start noticing the self-talk and you start noticing the negative, maybe emotions that you're feeling, if you name them or you claim them out loud, it actually lessens the effect of that. Can you kind of explain a little bit about that to everyone?
Yeah, so Dr. Siegel is an absolute brilliant doctor, scientist, researcher. and just the most compassionate person. And he was the first interview I did. And I was so almost overwhelmed and blown away by our 2 hour conversation because it just had like so many millions of nuggets. But a very simple one he did refer to was this idea of name it to tame it. And when, our mind starts to wander to the negative thoughts, the self-criticism, or fear, anxiety, he really explained that from a kind of neurobiological standpoint, when we shift our mind to even just observe and label the experience. So in that moment, say, I'm feeling fearful or I'm feeling nervous. Just that action itself starts to shift kind of how our neurons in our brain are going from a fight-flight response and start activating different aspects of the brain that can be more contemplative, empathetic, etc. So the name it to tame it was a really great one. Another one that both he and my dad referred to, I think I mentioned it in the book later in the trust chapter in regards to food, but it's the same thing when you're feeling any anxiety or fear, which is stop. So when you face a difficult situation, as this first stop, T is for take 3 breaths, O is for observe what you're feeling, and P is for proceed. So similar to the name it to tame it, take 3 breaths, observe what you're feeling, and then proceed, rather than kind of always reacting in that fight-flight mode.
Right. And I also love that right before the notice chapter, you talk about incubating, you talk about, not whether it's meditation or whatever that vice is for someone, cultivating a quiet, contemplative mindset is really the key to living with intent. And I think when you start there, it's easier to notice the different things, whether you're noticing, the universe helping you with opportunities, whether you're noticing your own self-talk. And I know you say you kind of had wavered with meditation and then you went back to it. So what was that experience like for you of kind of reconnecting with that meditation after kind of not being consistent with it?
Yeah, so like everyone else, we all lead busy lives, and we all then come up with the excuse of why we can't exercise or we can't meditate. Which me, like everyone else, have gone through years of doing it, years of being irregular, years of doing it twice a day for 30 minutes. And in my life right now, I do it for 15 to 20 minutes once a day, probably around 2 after I get done with my work stuff and before I get back into mom mode of picking up my girls and running around. But, meditation was truly a gift that my parents gave me at a young age and just helped me feel anchored and connected. And I think it's one of those things, I know when I meditate, I'm much more balanced and mindful and, in control, I would say. And when I'm not, I'm constantly feeling guilty that I should be meditating, but I'm too busy too. So it takes discipline. It took me, and I kind of created the ritual of creating the space and determining the time. And again, being forgiving that I can't do it, say, per the book that that we teach, but that even if I can do it for that 15 minutes once a day, it's great. Even if you can do it for 5 minutes, I do it sometimes in my carpool line at school. So, meditation doesn't have to be a complicated, overthought thing. Now, for others, I have friends that, prefer to go for a walk in nature. I just suggest don't do it with music, like be with nature, appreciate the silence. The reason I chose the word incubate is because I feel that intents really come from deep within our soul. Sometimes they just take time, and what I love about the word incubate is that, it's like we're planting a seed. And, when we plant a seed, we water it, we let the sun nurture it. It takes time for it to blossom into this beautiful flower. Similar when we have a baby, that's 9 months of incubation. And so sometimes we just need to give ourselves the time, the space, the silence to really reconnect with who we are and what we want.
Right. And now also I think it's the chapter called Express, you talk about micro-intents, this thing called micro-intents. And I think that sometimes people, when they think of an intent, they think it has to be this grand, large goal or this situation or, something that's going to come later on in life or something like that. But I love that you talk about these daily micro-intents. So can you explain what they are and how people can start utilizing them, even starting today, and utilizing these micro-intents every day?
Yeah, so because I have intent.com, I've seen that some people come to the site and immediately start expressing, intent. Other people actually feel quite intimidated at the idea that, oh my God, do I have to say what I really want or I don't know? And so what we've seen is people find it easier to support each other initially. But a friend of mine actually is the one who kind of came up with this idea of micro intents, which is, she's like, I don't really know what my intent is. I don't have like some big thing that it feels very intimidating to say it. So she decided just to write an intent daily, and then kind of later on notice kind of what the pattern was. But like that, her daily intent may be to connect with a friend today, or just to connect to someone today, or to take a walk and reconnect with nature. Or so for her, it became really just daily. Like if I can just do one thing today, I've stated things like, I'll know that okay, the next day is going to be just really busy, or maybe there's a stressful situation that I'm anticipating. So if I can just say, my intent today is just to remain anchored in the midst of chaos, by stating that, I've kind of created that anchor so that throughout the day, as I kind of do get crazy, I can go back to that micro intent and say, you know what? Take a deep breath and remember that's what you wanted to experience today. So people do love these micro intents, and we find people are posting daily, on the site and on our app, just things to kind of get through the day. And what's wonderful is that when you do put it out there and when you express it, you begin kind of this network of support. You've put it out there, people are supporting you, they're celebrating with you. So it's a really lovely, lovely experience.
Yes, absolutely. And I know the last piece of intent, or that acronym, is taking action. And I think a lot of people get tripped up with that because they think, well, how am I supposed to know when I'm supposed to take action, or how am I supposed to take action? For whatever reason, they can intend what they want, they know what they want, but they get crazy when it comes to taking action. So what would be kind of your advice with that aspect of intent?
So, I had a great kind of email back and forth with Ariana Huffington in the book.
Yes.
And one of the things that I know for me, obvious, stifles me from taking action often is the fear of failure, or the fear of judgment. And so I think Ariana and my kind of interaction was really great because she really talked about failure, and just getting up again and taking one step forward. And that's the thing. Sometimes we just have to take that one step, even if it's a step of complete uncertainty. Right. But I feel intent is about momentum and movement. And sometimes, and I gave some examples in the book, I outlined an exercise that I've done, which is kind of creating a mind map, which says what makes me happy, and then kind of putting ideas out there, and then even linking things that you think may be unconnected. And then brainstorming simple things you can do. For me, it was, I had reading and friends, and I kind of realized in my journey that, I was really lacking intellectual stimulation in my life, or lacking the poetry and the novels that had fed my soul. And when I kind of saw this on a piece of paper, I was like, let me start a reading group. Like, that wasn't something that was like a huge momentous like thing in my life, but meet my friends every 6 weeks with a book assignment. And I cannot tell you how that has enriched my life in so many ways. And it didn't have to be, again, this life-changing, service-oriented, massive intent. It was an intent that kind of really just fed my own personal soul and nurtured me more. So, I don't think everything has to be so kind of big and intimidating.
Yes. And actually, you reminded me of, I remember one of the things in the book where I literally grabbed a piece of paper and started jotting notes down was not only the mind map, but I think it was the wheel of balance, or the balance wheel, where you said, and I think it was through a conversation with your father where you wrote down, like things like sleep, spirituality, nutrition, all these areas, and you kind of looked at all these areas and said, okay, what's going on in these areas? How balanced am I in these areas, or what areas are lacking? I think that exercise alone, and I remember I wrote it down like I have to do this, because I think that exercise alone is such a great place for people to start to realize, what areas of my life do I need to start focusing on?
But I think what happened to me is I was just feeling overwhelmed. Like I couldn't even pinpoint what was wrong with my life. So I actually went, and believe it or not, I never go to my dad for advice. I go to my mom.
Right.
But I reached this stage and I was like, I am feeling really overwhelmed. I happened to be at my parents' house. My dad was sitting on Twitter, so I thought, oh, let me try. And so I did say to my dad, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I could see my dad starting to panic and look at my mom like for help. And then kind of he shifted from dad mode to Deepak mode. And we worked with, it was really inspired by the work of Dr. Dan Siegel and looking at the kind of what he calls a platter for good living. And so we took that and then created the balance wheel, which, like we said, went to the basics. Am I getting enough sleep? How is my diet? So we broke it down, but including intellectual stimulation. Am I having fun? Do I laugh? Do I play? And then spiritual connection. And we ranked them literally from 0 to 10. Where am I struggling, surviving, or thriving? And then when I could really see where I was struggling, then kind of in that area set kind of an intent to improve. So that really helped kind of create this pathway to move forward.
Yes, that's one of my favorites, I think. And you just reminded me of that, so I'm glad I brought it up. So I do want to end kind of with you explaining to people what intent.com is and the app and how they can kind of start utilizing that as a resource and a tool to live their own lives with more intent.
Yeah, so intent.com's been kind of my hobby that took off and became this much bigger thing. And what's amazing is one, we keep changing it and iterating it, and really have gone in the direction of being a social media platform. And what people do is it's really simple. You just come and you share your intent. It's like Twitter with a purpose or Instagram. We just launched our new app, which is about 2 to 3 weeks old, and it kind of allows this visual element with stating intents, and you can go and you can reaffirm your intent. You can update your journey, because I love the idea of being able to update my intents as I'm moving them. And so I invite people to come, and right now we're still integrating the website and the app. I think the app has a lot more functionality if people are able to download that. It's under intent.com in the iPhone, in the App Store, iTunes Store. But what is incredible about what we've created for me is that there's an entire community of people from around the world that are supporting each other. So when I put out an intent and suddenly I see like people from Africa and New Delhi and London, one, supporting me, it really makes me feel connected and supported in this interesting way. And second, when I'm able to connect with someone who has the same intent, whether it's to be a good mom or deal, with my sugar addiction, and I can connect with others who have similar intents, it's a really powerful thing to go on that journey together. So that's really our intent with the website, is to connect people who really are kind of trying to lead these healthier, happier, and as I said, more connected and purposeful lives.
Yes. And I think it really gives that sense of community as well that I think sometimes people who are on this journey are looking for. So I think that's great.
Thank you.
So I just have to say thank you so much for joining us. I want to remind everybody the book is called Living with Intent. Thank you again for joining us and for really kind of putting yourself out there and saying, listen, I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. And really, I think that really allows people to connect with you. So, and the book there's so many different, we touched on a few different nuggets that I wanted to give to you guys, but there's so many different pieces of wisdom that you can really grab from this. And so thank you for sharing your journey with all of us.
Thank you. I'm so grateful for the support. Really, thank you very much.
Absolutely. And thank you to all of our Elevated watchers and listeners out there, and we will see you next time.